My name is Adam, and you're watching Swords to Podcast. Thanks for watching. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Swords to Podcast. My name is Adam. Wait. I'm all alone. Yeah, that's right. Thomas is out of town. He is currently at the NCAA women's tournament hosted in Morgantown, West Virginia, the first round. The West Virginia Mountaineer women's basketball team got a high enough seed. They were able to host the first round of the tournament. So he went and visited that. That just means you guys get a singular episode of me. So today we're going to be going through one of my favorite decks as of recently that I've talked about on the show a little bit. And I've been messing around with, been tinkering with, and I think I've got a pretty good list for you. So we're gonna run through a deck tech on that. It is Ragost Deft Gastronaut, as you could, I'm sure, tell from the thumbnail and the title of this episode. So without further ado, let's jump into that. Hold on, before we go anywhere, just wanted to let you guys know that Thomas and I will be streaming with Diabolic Misplay. We will be playing some games of cEDH on Saturday, March 28th. This will be at 9 p.m. EST over on Twitch. I'll make sure to link everything in the description so you guys can check that out if you want to. So this will be the day after this episode airs. Hope to see you there. And before you go anywhere, again, we have a box of Ruby Matte Dragon Shields and 2 TMNT pre-release kits. These were given to us by our friends over at Comics Vault in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They gave us these exclusively for us to give away. More details will be coming soon. We're going to be putting it on the Discord, the Instagram, the TikTok, everything about this giveaway. We'd love to give these awesome pieces of magic stuff away, and so stay tuned for how we're going to give those away, and let us know if you have any ideas. Okay, now let's actually do the deck tech. All right, guys, here we are in Archidect. This is the newest deck on our Swords to Podcast Archidect page. So feel free to check this out if you have any other things you want to take a look at. Before we get into anything, let's talk about the commander. This is Ragost Deft Gastronaut, 1 red and 1 white, so Boros, for a 2/2 legendary Lobster citizen. This is one of the headliner commanders from Edge of Eternities, I think probably the most popular one from the set as well. He reads, artifacts you control are foods in addition to their other types and have pay 2 generic, tap, sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. So they have the food ability. And then you can pay 1 generic, tap Ragost, and sacrifice a food, and Ragost will deal 3 damage to each opponent. And then his last line of text, which is freaking sweet, which makes this deck viable, is at the beginning of each end step, if you gained life this turn, untap Ragost. So this is an incredibly strong one-sided damage dealing commander. You pay 1, tap it, sack a food, and it deals 9 total damage, 3 to everybody. Pretty sweet. It's a burn deck that really doesn't have to rely on singling out 1 player at a time. This just hits everybody at once. Big fan. We're just going to get straight into this. So we're actually going to tackle, we're going to take the Thomas approach and tackle the land base first. So you can see our land base is actually reasonably robust. We've got 30, excuse me, I'm sick. So I apologize for my voice and probably the mucus that you can hear on the microphone. So our land base is pretty robust. We've got 37, including the 1 MDFC we've got, which is, let me go down, it'll be in here, which is Witch Enchanter, which is the flip side is Witchblessed Meadow, which is just a white source that can enter untapped. So Ancient Den, artifact land, pretty self-explanatory. Battlefield Forge, it's a, dual source. Buried Ruin is pretty nice. It's a little recursion piece. I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with this card. It's taps for a colorless, enters untapped. You can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it, and return target artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty nice piece to have, especially when it comes on land that enters untapped. There's another conditionally untapped land, command tower, blah blah blah. Fury Calm Snarl. Big fan of these reveal lands. They enter untapped if you reveal a basic of their types. Big fan of these, especially because it's a 2-color deck. We're running almost 20 basics in here, so that will come down untapped almost all the time. Let's see, Inspiring Vantage, Great Furnace, another artifact land. This time it's red. Here's an awesome one. Folks, this land has single-handedly won me games before. This is Junktown. You can tap it to add a colorless. It always enters untapped. And you can pay 4 and a red, tap it, and sacrifice Junktown and create 3 junk tokens. You might not be familiar with junk tokens, but what they are is they're just artifact tokens. With tap, sacrifice this artifact, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So activate only as a sorcery. So these are sorcery speed on your turn, impulse card draw. It's super nice because it's play that card this turn. So if you find a land off of this, you can play that as your land for turn. But most of the time, this Junktown is helping me out late game. If I'm having trouble, people shot my Smothering Tithe, they got rid of my token generators. Junktown is great. I'm always more than happy to sacrifice this Junktown late game and make some either impulse card draw or some tokens to feed to Ragost. So continuing with our lands, this is another one that kind of went under the radar. There's a lot of Lord of the Rings cards that are actually really sweet in this deck. We'll get to some more later, but this is Mines of Moria. It's a legendary land. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature. Our commander is 2 CMC, so most of the time we'll have a legendary creature, and obviously it's not the only legend in the deck, but you get my point. Cheap CMC commander, Mines of Moria pretty typically comes in untapped. It adds a red when you tap it, or you can pay 3 a red and tap it and exile 3 cards from your graveyard and make 2 treasure tokens. So obviously, you're paying 4 mana and tapping this land, so effectively using up 5 mana to make 2 treasures. Not a great deal, but if you're late game or whatever, you don't have any treasure generators or token generators, you've got extra fodder in your graveyard that you probably don't need because there's not a whole lot of recursion in here. You can just exile that away and make 2 treasure tokens. This card's actually come in handy quite a few times, just like Junktown, just making a couple extra tokens sometimes gets you there. That's all you really need. Here we've got 11 mountains, our Needle Verge pathway, which if you guys haven't seen these pathways, I believe this is Zendikar Rising they're originally from. You can play them as an untapped single color source. Let's see, there's our basic plains and a Sacred Foundry. There's our Shockland. Spire of Industry is awesome. And always enters on taps for colorless, and you can tap it and pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color, only if you control an artifact. You might find it's hard to believe that there's a lot of artifacts in this deck. We got a Sunbillow Verge. This is actually the exact treatment I have in the deck. Very swanky looking. Love this. Sundown Pass, another dual land. Sunscorched Divide. There's our Signet land that we were hating on a little while ago. Treasure Vault. This is an interesting one. I'm pretty sure this land is fairly well known about. It is an artifact land that taps for a colorless, enters untapped, and you can pay X generic, tap it and sacrifice Treasure Vault to make X treasure tokens. I have yet to actually use that last ability. Mostly what this is in the deck for is it being an artifact land, so it helps with any kind of artifact synergies, all kinds of other stuff that we have going on in the deck. Pretty nice. Then, actually, that's our last land, so that is our land base. Now, let's talk about the main goal of the deck, which is finding a way to give Ragost lifelink. So whenever he deals the damage, we will gain that life, and then that will proc his second ability to untap him. So we have currently three ways to do that in the deck. We have Spirit Link. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage, you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. It's not actually lifelink, it's separate lifelink. So if we have this Spirit Link and something like Basilisk Collar, we'll actually gain double. It'll be like double lifelink, which is pretty sweet. Basilisk Collar is an artifact with... it costs 1 generic, and it's an artifact equipment. A creature has Death Touch and Lifelink, and equipped for 2. Loxodon Warhammer is pretty significantly worse, but it does the same thing. It's 3 generic for an equipment that gives the equipped creature +3/+0, and it has Trample and Lifelink, and you can pay 3 generic to equip it. So those are pretty impactful. Basically, we don't want to be tapping Ragost unless we find a way to give it Lifelink or find other ways to untap it. So... next up, these cards are our generic treasure generators. We've got, your staples. We've got Monologue Tax, Smothering Tithe. Tataru Taru is a fairly new one from the Final Fantasy Commander, one of the Final Fantasy Commander decks. Doesn't trigger a whole lot, but it is pretty nice to just have a very cheap treasure generator. Often pays for itself. Now here, pet card of all pet cards. This is Curse of Opulence. Oh my goodness. If you guys have not heard me go nuts over this card,
If this is in my hand, it's a snap keep pretty much. Curse of Opulence is 1 red for an enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. When enchanted player is attacked, create a colorless artifact token named Gold. It has sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So Gold is technically a power crept treasure. It's a treasure that you don't have to tap. So these golds can technically be tapped, and then you can sacrifice them later for mana. That rarely comes up, but it is worthy of note. Curse of Opulence is like the best turn 1 play in this deck. I argue it's even better than a turn 1 Ragavan. Curse of Opulence, you can put it on the player that, you know, maybe people are instinctively going to hit with damage first. You know, the player that maybe runs Necropotence, that people might want to start pressuring their life total. Things like that, you can really get some insane value off of Curse of Opulence. I find our Curse of Opulence making at least 5 or 6 mana for me all the time. In addition, other players are incentivized to do it. It speeds up games. It gives them mana too. But you're going to be obviously netting the most mana because you get 1 every time. You can trigger it yourself. Your bonus trigger. It's awesome. Descend into Avernus, again, pretty standard. Here is another Lord of the Rings card that I said. Some of these are pretty impactful. This is Glowin Dwarf Emissary. I might have said that wrong. But 2 generic and a red for a 3/3 legendary Dwarf Advisor. Whenever you cast a historic spell, create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn, and then you can tap Glowin and sacrifice a treasure to goad target creature. If you're unfamiliar with goad, goad basically means the creature has to attack, and it has to attack a player other than you if possible. It's until your next turn. So basically, if you activate this during your turn or during your opponent's turn, it'll just, once it gets back around to you, then that creature will no longer be goaded. Glowin looks on his front face as if he is just a treasure generator, which is valid. This effectively means the first historic spell I cast each turn costs 1 less. Pretty sweet to begin with. But that goad ability is actually pretty sweet. This deck often struggles to keep an intimidating creature presence. So we often find ourselves taking quite a bit of damage because our creatures are small, or we don't have very many of them because we're trying to just build tokens and create value that way. So Glowin is basically able to say, okay, for 1 mana every turn, we can shut off the biggest creature our opponents have, and not only shut it off, but make them send it elsewhere. So, you know, if someone's got a World Spine Worm, you can just goad it and send it somewhere else. And so that treasure generating ability is not insanely strong, especially compared to some of the other 3-drops in this category, but that goad ability is just so perfect, and nobody really sees that coming. Professional Facebreaker, Ragavan, you all have seen these. These are tried and true treasure generators. Everybody knows about these. Moving on. We're going to talk about name of the game in this deck is finding card draw. It's very, very difficult to get consistent card draw in this deck. We only have a few that are directly and exclusively in the deck for card draw. But this card right here, Benny Brack Zoologist, all-star in the deck. Again, if I keep an opening hand that has Benny Bracks in it, or if I have an opening hand with Benny Bracks in it, snap keep. Benny Bracks is 3 generic and a white for a 3/2 legendary elf druid with Convoke, so your creatures can help cast him. And at the beginning of each end step, if you created a token this turn, draw a card. Oftentimes in this deck, we are finding ways to generate tokens at instant speed, so we can often trigger Benny Bracks multiple times per turn rotation, and frankly, there's a reason he's a $10 card on TCG Player. He is an absolute all-star, in addition to the fact that he's only been printed in, I think that's Murders of Karlov Manor Commander, so, you know, he's relatively limited in printing-wise, but Benny Bracks is an awesome card in this deck. We have Esper Sentinel, shocker, turn 1 Esper Sentinel's good. Rent is Due is an interesting one. We talked about this a little bit more around when Spider-Man was coming out. This was one of my favorite cards in the set. This is 1 white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, if you may tap 2 untapped creatures and or treasures you control. If you do, draw a card, otherwise sacrifice this enchantment. So this is 1 mana to draw 1 card basically every turn rotation if you have untapped creatures or treasures lying around. Oftentimes, I'll actually find myself tapping Ragost to this the turn he comes down, because this doesn't care about summoning sickness, number 1. And number 2, I don't ordinarily want to be tapping Ragost and actually dealing damage and making him the threat until we find some way to either give him lifelink so he can deal more damage and untap himself, or until I can find some way to protect him. So just being able to tap him down because he's a cheap creature, and, you know, using treasures and creatures to draw an extra card every turn is freaking sweet. I love Rent is Due. And then Idol of Oblivion is pretty standard 2-mana artifact that draws you a card when you tap it if you've created a token this turn. Pretty good. I have yet to actually use that last ability to make the 10/10 colorless Eldrazi, but you know, it could come up. You never know. Right. Moving on. What the heck are all these doing over here? Well, that's stupid. I'll move these over in a second, but let me run you through these. So these are more token generators, just not necessarily mana or treasures. Loyal Apprentice, if you have your commander, it makes a colorless Lobster. Awesome. Weapons Manufacturing is one from Edge of Eternities, basically designed for this deck. Whenever a non-token artifact you control enters, create a colorless artifact named Munitions, with when this token leaves the battlefield, deals 2 damage to any target. So these munitions basically have no ability to sacrifice themselves, so they're designed to become foods and have Ragost eat them, and then this helps you either deal extra damage to opponents, or you can pick off small creatures. Pretty sweet. Stridehanger Automaton. If one or more artifact tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional 1/1 colorless Lobster artifact creature token with flying are created instead, and Thopters you control get +1/+1. This card's pretty sweet. Doubles most of your token generation, or I guess all of your token generation in theory, if they're all artifacts. Makes you little 1/1 flying blockers. Those come in handy more than you think. Making them 2/2s is pretty sweet. With this thing pumping them. And now here, All-Star. If you have a way to tutor for an artifact, get this Nuka-Cola vending machine. There's a reason this card is $20. It's 3 generic for an artifact with pay 1 generic, tap, create a food token, nobody cares. Whenever you sacrifice a food, create a tapped treasure token. So, the way this works is, with Ragost on the table, Ragost sees your treasures as food, or turns your treasures into food. Whenever you sacrifice one of those treasures as a food, Nuka-Cola vending machine sees it and makes a tapped treasure. So if you sacrifice this tapped treasure over and over again with Ragost's ability once per turn, I guess, technically 4 times per turn rotation if you're untapping him, you'll never run out of tokens. With Ragost out, this triggers off of any artifact that you're sacrificing, so this can net you extra mana, regardless of if you're sacrificing it with Ragost or whatever. So if you sacrifice a treasure for mana, it is technically a food through Ragost's ability, so it'll come back. But the hands are tapped, so you can't make infinite mana with this. That would be pretty sweet if you find a way to have them enter untapped. I don't have any ways in this deck. This deck does really not go infinite, but this just ensures that you'll never run out of pieces for Ragost to eat. Let me move these over to the token generators before I forget. There we go. Alrighty, might as well dig into the meat and potatoes, I guess. Here's the ramp. It's pretty standard. We've got most of the mana rocks. Bender's Water Skin is definitely one that I'll shout out. It's really good in the deck, especially if you're untapping Ragost every time. Wayfarer's Bauble. We've got the Talisman, the Signet, Felwar Stone, Arcane Signet. We've got a Jessica's Will in here because it's pretty sweet, pretty easy to get Ragost down. Slam Jessica's Will turn 3, make a boatload of mana and impulse draw some cards. Big fan of that. Not too much to speak about there. It's pretty standard Boros ramp package. All right, well, let's talk about something that I put in this deck that really, I think, makes this deck tick. So Ragost, as I mentioned earlier, has the ability to deal 3 damage, and technically, or to everybody, to 3 opponents, so 9 damage. And when you're dealing that much damage, and you are untapping him and doing it 4 times a turn rotation, that adds up. Your opponents are going to be watching you very carefully, and as soon as Ragost starts dealing damage and starts presenting a threat, he is going to get removed. So, this deck runs a humongous amount of interaction. So, I guess we'll go over our protection suite first. We've got Flawless Maneuver. It's free if we have Ragost, which most of the time we do. It gives our creatures indestructible. We've got Lava Spur Boots and Lightning Greaves, which give Ward 1 and Shroud. The haste is kind of nice on these, but I find that mattering very little unless it's Lightning Greaves specifically. And then we've got Boros Charm, so this can double as removal. Direct damage. If we have someone low that we just need to kill them right away. Gives our permanents indestructible, just like Flawless Maneuver. Or target creature gets double strike until end of turn. I have yet to have that double strike matter, but it doesn't have to target one of our creatures. So if your opponent's getting swung on with an 11/11 commander, you can just slap a Boros Charm on it and take someone out of the game. pretty sweet. Those, I guess, are our only real specific protection pieces for our creatures. But let's move on to another all-star, which is part of this interaction package. It is Sunforger. Sunforger is a Boros, is a long-time Boros commander card. If you're unfamiliar, Sunforger is 3 generic for an artifact equipment. A creature gets +4/+0, and then you can pay a red and a white and unattached Sunforger. Search your library for a red or white instant card with converted mana cost 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost, then shuffle your library. And then Sunforger has equip 3 generic. Sunforger is freaking sweet. So basically, we're in Boros, right? Our counterspell options and things like that, and our trickery options are a little bit slim. We've got stuff like Red Elemental Blast that lets us counter blue spells and things like that, but and Null Elemental Blast. God, I love that card. So we've got cards like that, but they're not. It's like they're so narrow most of the time, and so having Sunforger in the deck is great. It's like you can just open your toolbox and find whatever piece you need. So we've got all sorts. We've split up our removal into removal and stack interaction because there is just so much removal. So going through our stack interaction, we've got Mana Tithe. This card's awesome. You love it. I love it. Reprieve. This is an interesting one. Again, another Lord of the Rings card. It's a 2-mana instant that returns a spell to an owner's hand and you draw a card. There's very few times that Reprieve really, really feels good. But sometimes if an opponent taps out for something huge, Reprieve can really, really slow them down. Notably, Reprieve can actually counter things that are uncounterable. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but if someone's trying to slam a Hullbreaker Horror and they're like, oh, I don't care about your Sunforger, you can't Red Elemental Blast my Hullbreaker Horror. Well, that sucks. I'm going to Reprieve it back to your hand, and then you're going to have to pay 7 mana for it again. So really, really sweet. I think of most of the cards on this list, Reprieve will probably be one of the first ones to go, but it does have some gotcha moments, and the card draw on it is nice. It does replace itself. Burnout is cool. It's a really weird card that not a lot of people know about, at least I don't think. It's basically a red Elemental Blast with draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep stapled onto it for 2 mana. So it is a cantrip that counters a blue spell. I like it. It's, nice in the right situation, and then, it lets you keep your Red Elemental Blast in the deck if you're grabbing this with Sunforger, and then it lets you draw an extra card. So it is kind of nice to have as a toolbox card. Now, Display of Power. This is an interesting one. 1 generic and 2 red for an instant that can't be copied, and copy any number of target or instant or sorcery spells. You may choose new targets for the copies. So what's cool with Display of Power is if there's a huge stack battle going on, even if it's over something you don't necessarily care about, Display of Power lets you copy every instant sorcery on the stack. So if there's multiple counterspells, if there's a counterspell war going on, you can basically pull every counterspell from each player and then direct them at one spell that you specifically don't want to resolve, or anything like that. It lets you you can copy ramp spells with this. You can copy removal spells with this. This card is awesome. Like I said, when there's a full stack of all sorts of things, this just lets you copy everything. Let's see, Flare of Duplication. This one's pretty standard. This is, I think, sort of better than Red Elemental Blast from time to time. This as a counterspell counter, basically. This Flare of Duplication can be free if it's in your hand, or obviously it's 3 CMC, so you can fetch it with Sunforger. And then you can copy an instant sorcery spell. So if it's a counterspell, you can copy the counterspell, targeting the counterspell, and counter the counterspell. So big fan of that. Red Elemental Blast, counter target blue spell, or destroy target blue permanent. Big fan. Redirect Lightning. This is a fairly new one from Avatar. It's got that kind of high additional cost, which you do unfortunately have to pay if you grab this off of Sunforger, but 5 life shouldn't be a big deal, especially with the lifelink we're giving to our commander. And then this is another redirect. We've got Tybalt's Trickery. So this is the one card in the deck, besides obviously Mana Tithe, that just counters a spell outright. So this is sort of a last resort. Obviously, we don't want them casting another free spell, but if we really need something to be countered, they have the mana to pay for Mana Tithe. We don't want to return it to their hand. It's not blue. It's not multicolored. Tybalt's Trickery just hits absolutely everything. No elemental blast, we've talked about it before, basically says counter or destroy target commander, which is awesome. And then our removal package is sort of weird, but I'll run you through some of it. Abolish, this is a card that I am such a big fan of. This is from Prophecy. You can discard a Blades from your hand instead of paying Abolish's mana cost. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Obviously, we've got plenty of artifact and enchantment removal in Boros, but this is a free spell that we can also grab with Sunforger. So we don't have to hit a lot of the downsides of some of the other free spells. Dispatch is swords to plowshares without downside because we have Metalcraft online most of the time, which enchanter we already talked about. Bottle Cap Blast. 4 generic and a red for an instant with Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tapped after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1 generic. So if you have enough artifacts that are just laying around, you can play this for 1 red. Bottle Cap Blast deals 5 damage to any target. If excess damage was dealt to a permanent this way, create that many tapped treasure tokens. I rarely use this card to destroy something really big that 5 damage really matters. Oftentimes I'm going to hit something with 2 or 3 toughness, just make some extra treasures. Chaos Warp, of course, pretty standard, just hits any permanent. Again, here comes another all-star Lord of the Rings card out of the woodwork. Spiteful Banditry. This is an interesting one, and because it's an enchantment, unfortunately you can't grab it with Sunforger, but it is so worth it. This is X and 2 red for an enchantment. When Spiteful Banditry enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to each creature. Whenever one or more creatures your opponents control die, you create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. So Spiteful Banditry is a card that lets us get back into the game. So when our opponents inevitably destroy our Lightning Greaves and then destroy our commander, we can use Spiteful Banditry as a board wipe that will then become a treasure generator as everyone starts building up their board and sacrificing or killing each other's creatures. This Spiteful Banditry card normally makes me between 8 and 10 treasures a game when I play it. And that's pretty impressive for a 2 CMC enchantment. And what's cool is I've even played this where X is equal to 0 as just a treasure generator. Oftentimes you can play this for X is equal to 1 just to deal 1 damage to everything. Ragost typically won't die to that because he's a 2/2. So you can kill off a bunch of small creatures and then get at least 1 treasure token back from that. Big fan. And then a Roller Crusher Ride is a similar thing, but not quite the same. It does something totally different. Or it has a different secondary ability. This is a sort of pseudo board wipe on an enchantment. This is from Duskmourn. It's X, 2 generic, and a red for a legendary enchantment with Delirium. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player while there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, it deals double that damage instead. And when the Roller Crusher Ride enters, it deals X damage to each of up to X target creatures. So that reads a little weird, but what it means is if you put 1 into X, it deals 1 damage to 1 target creature. If you put 2 into X, it deals 2 damage to 2 creatures, so 4 damage total. 3 into X deals 3 damage to 3 creatures, 9 damage total. So it scales pretty exponentially. Big fan of this card. This is, if you don't pay anything into the X, this is one of the cheapest damage doublers possible. And realistically, in this deck, the only kind of damage we're trying to double is Ragost. So that non-combat damage stipulation does not really matter to us. And just being able to kill a few creatures when this comes down and just put us ahead a little bit is so freaking sweet. And it's a 50-cent card. What the heck? That's crazy. It is sort of niche. Like, it is pretty tied to this deck. Like, I don't know how many other decks would necessarily want that specifically. But in this deck, it is an all-star. And then last but not least on our removal list, we've got Wear and Tear. This is just basically another copy of Abolish, but it's just not a free spell. We can grab this with our the Sunforger and then destroy an artifact or enchantment. We cannot cast both sides, but we do get to hit one thing. Let's see. I guess really the only things we got to go through are the tutors. Pretty simple here. Enlightened Tutor gets us our treasure generators, or gets us our Sunforger, or our Nuka-Cola vending machine. Open the Armory gets us our Sunforger or our Lifelinkers or our protection pieces. Gamble finds us anything. Goblin Engineer finds us anti-artifact, and Reckless Handling finds us anti-artifact. Reckless Handling really came out a whole bunch because, or it really came into the spotlight recently, I think because of Green Goblin and the cEDH list that were coming out with it. Green Goblin just works so well with Lion's Eye Diamond that cEDH pilots were trying to find any sort of artifact tutor that can get you a Lion's Eye Diamond, and Reckless Handling is a pretty good one. It is a little bit of a bummer that it's a sorcery, so you can't grab it with your Sunforger, but, you know, I think we can live with it. 2 mana to get any artifact into our hand, pretty good. Let's see. We only have 2 categories left to go, and this one is going to be a little bit of a controversial one. I'll just pull it up. Grafted Exoskeleton. This is an equipment that gives the equipped creature +2/+2 and infect. And then whenever it becomes unattached from a permanent, sacrifice that permanent. That doesn't really matter. So giving Ragost infect means our opponents suddenly go from a 2 or 3 turn clock to a 1 turn clock. They've got effectively 1 turn rotation to find a way to stop our plan and kill Ragost or get rid of this Grafted Exoskeleton before they die, because they will get 12 poison counters and they will die. Very, very stupid. This card is a huge lightning rod for removal. Most of the time this comes down, people just spend their removal on it, and you don't even really get to activate it all that much. So if you play this deck and you run Grafted Exoskeleton, tell me how that works for you in the comments, because for me, I haven't killed anybody with the poison counters yet. It's just it just is too quick to get removed. This is an interesting one. I don't know. I haven't looked at any of the EDH rec lists for Ragost yet, despite how much I've been building him. But Illusionist Bracers, I don't think is really on there. Whenever it's too generic for an artifact equipment, whenever an ability of equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this just gets you double Ragost activation. So this takes this doubles Ragost's damage, which pretty sweet on an equipment that if Ragost gets killed, you can just slap this back on him when he comes down. And our last category is, I have it nicknamed Big Splashies. So these are cards that either do something really, really impactful, or are absolute lightning rods for removal. The first one we have is Split Up. So this is one of 2 board wipes that we have in the deck. It says it's 1 white for sorcery that says choose 1, destroy all tapped creatures, or destroy all untapped creatures. Because we have the ability to tap our commander, as well as quite a few of the other creatures in this deck, we can time this Split Up pretty effectively. That if a lot of people are swinging, we can leave our creatures untapped and then destroy all the tapped ones. Or if a lot of our opponent's creatures are untapped, we can tap some of our creatures with their abilities and then use Split Up to basically it's a one-sided board wipe that costs 3 mana. It's pretty sweet. It also has the side ability of working really great with Flawless Maneuver, because it only says destroy. So if we cast this Split Up and slap our Flawless Maneuver on top of it, giving all of our things indestructible, regardless of if they're tapped or untapped or which mode of Split Up we choose, we won't lose any of our creatures, which is pretty nice. I have yet to actually have that specific interaction happen, but Split Up, every game that I've had it has been, like I said, an all-star. I feel like I've said that so many times. Now, Chandra's Incinerator is a card that I have not gotten to play yet, but I really want to. So Chandra's Incinerator is 5 generic and a red for a 6/6 elemental. This spell costs X generic less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. Like I said, it's a 6/6 with trample. And whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So if you activate Ragost once, Chandra's Incinerator will cost 1 red. You're getting a 6/6 trampler for 1 red. Already kind of bonkers. But that second ability means every time you activate Ragost, you get to lightning bolt one of each of your opponent's creatures. And now there's a cool interaction with Ragost where if you activate him in response to his trigger and then untap him and activate him again in the same turn, you can deal 6 damage in 1 turn. So Chandra's Incinerator does not necessarily mean that you can only deal 3 damage. If you do it correctly and you need to kill something that's bigger than 3 toughness, or really kill a planeswalker that turn, Chandra's Incinerator is freaking sweet. Like I said, I have yet to actually cast this card in a game, but I guarantee you as soon as I pick off a creature or 2, people are going to immediately target this card. And it's just paying 1 mana for a 6/6 Trampler with this ability is absolutely bonkers in this deck. Hellkite Tyrant is another one that is a huge lightning rod for removal. I played this once in one game and it absolutely took over the game. This is 4 generic and 2 red for a 6/5 dragon with flying and trample. When this creature deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that player controls. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. I have not procced that second ability. I have not had 20 or more artifacts yet. But Hellkite Tyrant is awesome because you can steal all of your opponent's artifacts. It gives you access to extra mana, which we always need help with in Boros. But also, you can eat their artifacts with Ragost. If you're worried they're going to find ways to take them back, just eat the artifacts. And then they go to your opponent's graveyards and you don't lose out on any value. And that second ability is definitely nothing to scoff at. If you've got a Smothering Tithe out and a Hellkite Tyrant, your opponents are going to be looking your way, for sure. Scrap Mastery. This is 3 generic and 2 red for a sorcery. Each player exiles all artifact cards from his or her graveyard, then sacrifices all artifacts he or she controls, then puts all cards he or she exiled this way onto the battlefield. So this Scrap Mastery is a card that can help us get back into the game after our opponents have blown us out with something. They board wipe us, they destroy some of our artifacts. This lets us nerf quite a bit of their ramp oftentimes, and get all of our stuff back. So if we're just constantly getting dogged on, constantly getting our artifacts removed, we could slam this late game and kind of turn the tide of the game. I have not gotten the ability to cast this yet, but there are definitely games that I've played where I've wanted a card like this. So this was one of the most recent additions to this deck. And then the last card that I'm sure you guys have been looking at is Treasure Nabber. This is 2 generic and a red for a 3/2 Goblin Rogue. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, gain control of that artifact until the end of your next turn. So normally you have the downside of, you have to give it back after your next turn. But with Ragost, you can eat those artifacts. And most people, oftentimes, this doesn't even give you any artifacts. Most times, this just means your opponents will never activate their mana rocks because they will be too scared of you slamming Ragost and eating their artifacts. It's a $3 card. And so people typically take out Treasure Nabber as soon as he comes down just because they're so scared of it. So yeah, that is the deck tech. Basically, you want to look for ways, when you're playing this deck, you want to look for ways to grab this Sunforger, grab this new Goal of Ending Machine, grab these lifelink pieces, grab some of these token generators. Oftentimes, because this Open the Armory specifically finds me an equipment, I get Sunforger as often as possible because with the Sunforger, you have access to all this extra stuff, all the interaction removal and protections pieces, but it also gives you access to Enlightened Tutor, which is pretty sweet. So you can search for one artifact, then you can use the Sunforger to cast the Enlightened Tutor if you don't already have it in your hand, and then you can cast that Enlightened Tutor and go find another piece. So that's a nice little interaction that I typically try to get going in games. Let's see. Yeah, basically any hand that you want to look for 2 to 3 lands, maybe a ramp piece, and then something that generates tokens or card draw, something like that, and you're set with this deck. This is a lot of fun. This deck is a 4 based on the game changers in it. It's got the Jessica's Will, Enlightened Tutor, Gamble, and Smothering Tithe. I would like to put in Deflecting Swat. That's the game changer that I would like to, another game changer I'd like to put in this deck. I'd probably swap it in for something like the Burnout or maybe that Redirect Lightning, something like that. That would help us there. But that's an expensive card, and I haven't come across someone willing to trade or sell me a copy of that yet. So we'll get there when we get there. This deck does fold to early game removal quite a bit, so it's really a good idea to not become a threat and not start tapping Ragost and present yourself as the threat until you can really start untapping him or doubling his damage or really put the table on a short clock. So that's really something to keep in mind when you're playing this deck. But otherwise, this deck is a huge amount of fun. I love playing. I mean, with this interaction package, we've got 22 pieces of interaction if you count the protection and removal and stack interaction, and I guess technically 24 if you count the 2 board wipes in Scrap Mastery and Split Up. So yeah, this deck is super heavy on interaction. People do not expect you to be running 1, 2, 3, sort of 4, 5, sort of 6, 7, 8 counter spells in Boros. But you know what we said in our last episode, you do not have to be playing blue to play blue. Play all the fun color pie breaks. We love those. You know, nothing will ever, in my mind, fill me with more joy than getting to counter something with a null elemental blast. Man, I got to counter like a ruinous ultimatum or something. Like it was like a 7 mana board wipe that I got to counter with this null elemental blast. Like it was so cool. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. It's just basically me rambling for 40 minutes. I hope you guys don't mind, and if you stay to the end of the video, I will love you forever. But you know, Thomas will be back next week, and like I said, we will be on Diabolic Misplay's stream on Twitch. Like I said, I'll link everything in the description. We'll be doing that tomorrow, Saturday, March 28th. Yeah, March 28th at 9 p.m. EST. So please join us for that. We're going to be having a good time. Probably losing to Diabolic Misplay because they're more cEDH than us. They're pretty good. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Yeah, thanks so much for watching. See you guys later.